Okay, in our last video and last section, we were looking at describing data. We were getting used to seeing what data is, understanding the difference between quantitative and qualitative data. In this video, we're going to take a look at organizing and graphing categorical, or what we often think of as qualitative data. Okay, so sometimes this is referred to as categorical, sometimes it's referred to as qualitative. They're the same thing. Okay, this is a bunch of qualitative data of a bunch of random students' majors. I tried to simplify things so there weren't too many different majors. And you can imagine if you had hundreds and hundreds of students, this would be a really overwhelming list. It's probably hard to look at this and without doing some work, sort of figure out which major is the most frequent, which one's the least frequent, how do they compare. But often this is how the data is presented. So you have a bunch of data, and the real question is, okay, you can't just say, here's every student's majors. You have to sort of organize it and summarize it in some way. So in this section, we're going to look at some very simple tools that you've probably already used before. This can be done at a very simple level, just ways to take that data and give it some sort of meaningful presentation. Okay, so here are a few different ways visually to see the data. A frequency table, right? This is a very simple thing. You can just use tally marks. As you're working, you go through each one, put a tally mark in a column, and then sort of turn those tally marks into into numbers. Okay. So based on this table here, we have one column, which is the major. We list all the majors. We go through and we count them all up. Biology has 5. So let's look back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? That's where the 5 came from. So you're counting up how many you saw of each major, putting them in a table. Okay, and now you have a better sense. Now it's pretty clear to see that nursing major is the most common, psychology is the least common, and so on, right? But it's still not quite the same as a picture. So if you look over here, we have things like bar graphs, and I'm sure you've seen bar graphs. They're used all the time in books and studies and things like that to represent visually things. Now the bar graph, each rectangle has a description, right? And this is qualitative data. So there's no real ranking of these. It's not that biology comes first because it's alphabetically first. I think this actually is done in alphabetical order here. But that's just because I did this in Excel, and Excel probably picked some default to do this. But if I change the order of these rectangles, it wouldn't change the overall picture of the graph. The height of each rectangle is important. The height of each rectangle represents the frequency. So we said there were 5 biology majors. That's why this rectangle is 5 units high. There are 3 counseling majors. That's why this rectangle is 3 units high, and so on. So when we look at these frequency tables, we can turn them into bar graphs by simply making the height of each rectangle the number of the count. Okay. Now there's space between these because they're not connected in any way, they're not ranked in any way. Okay. Sometimes more than just a bar graph, we're interested in a percentage, right? Sometimes the numbers aren't as important as the percentage. So this is what we call a relative frequency bar graph. And all of these numbers, you can see the basic pattern and shape is the same, right? But the numbers have changed, right? So biology, which was 5 over here, is now 20%. So the question really is, where did that come from, right? Well, how many majors do we have altogether? Let's add this up. Right? It looks like we have 5, 8, 13, 16, 17, 24 majors, right? 24 majors. Now, if I take 5 out of 24, right, I'm going to get something that's roughly 20%. Okay. It's about oops, let me see if I might just type this because it'll work better. Okay, so we'll say that this is 0.208. Okay, so if you want to do a relative frequency graph, you would need to add a column to your frequency table. Right, and we would call this, I'm going to stick to typing because it's hard to type and draw. This would be the relative frequency right? And you would just add a column, right, and start filling in all the numbers, right? So we would do 3 out of 24. We do 5 out of 24, right? We know that this one is also going to be 0.208, right? And then we'll fill in all the others. So let's just try to get all these in here. 3 out of 24 is, this is getting to be a little bit of a mess. Let me see if I can clean this up. So we got this one here. We got this one here. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just slide this down. 3 out of 24 is 0.125. 5 out of 24 is 0.208. 3 out of 24 again is 0.125 again. And now 7 out of 24 is 0.291. Maybe I'll just bring these over to keep it more consistent. And then the last one, 1 out of 24 is 0.042. Okay, so I just got my calculator out, figured those out, right? You're just dividing by total, dividing by the total, dividing by the total, and so on. Okay, this got a little bit messy. It's hard still with this computer to kind of get everything right on the screen, but we'll do one of these from sort of start to finish, okay? But in this section, you're going to be asked to take a bunch of data like this, make a table, then turn that table into a bar graph, and then you'll also be asked maybe some questions based on the bar graph. So we might give you a bar graph or even a pie chart and then ask you some questions about how to read it. Okay, so let's sort of do this one together from scratch here. Okay, so now we're going to just start entering things. The first major I see is counseling. Right, then I see education. Then I see biology. I see nursing. I see history, and I see psychology, okay? And then we're going to go through and just simply count them up. So I'm going to use a little pen here and do some tick marks. Now, it helps sometimes to put lines through things so that you can count and don't miss something, but you don't want to make such a big line that you can't read it, right? Counseling 1, 2, 3, right? So that's going to make this be a 3. Education, right? I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'll fill in a 5 here, and it's as simple as this, right? Just count them up. Biology, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm getting a different order than the table in the previous example. Again, I think I did it in Excel and it just automatically put it in alphabetical order. That doesn't matter. Nursing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I put a 7 here. History, I can see 1, 2, 3, so I'll put a 3 in here. I can see there's only one left. That's psychology, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in without crossing it out. Now, if I count this up, I see 5 here, 5 here, 5 here, 5 here. That's 20, 24. I just want to do a quick check. 3 plus 5, that's 8, 13, 20, 24, right? Always do a quick check that you got it right. And then it's just a question of making a bar graph. Okay, now I have some nice tools here I can use to make straight lines. Yours don't have to really be perfect. I'm going to abbreviate, the names so I don't try to, fit all the words in here. So I'll just use counseling, I'll use education, I'll use biology, I'll use nursing, I'll use history, and psychology. Okay, I'll spread these out a little more just to make use of the space here. Okay. And now all I'm going to do is just start drawing some rectangles. Now I'm going to need a scale over here on the vertical side, right? And I know the highest I have to go is 7. So I might go do something like 10, 9, 8. Let's see if this fits. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Doesn't quite fit. It'll be much easier for you to do this on pen and paper. So I'll just make these numbers a little smaller so that they fit. Okay. And now I'm going to just start with my rectangles. Now, ideally I would have tick marks going across here, but I don't want to spend too much time in this video dealing with little things like that. So I'm going to go ahead, and you're going to do this on pen and paper. So the counseling rectangle should be 3 high. Okay, and now I can adjust this. You're going to do the best you can on your paper. All right, this looks like about 3. Maybe I'll make it a little smaller. Let me just try that again and see. I'm going to just try to draw it actually. I'm going to go up to 3. This will be more like what yours look like, right? Down. Okay. Education is going to be 5, so I'll go up a little higher, up to 5. All right. But it's as simple as just drawing a rectangle the right height. Biology is 5 also. All right. You can probably draw straighter lines than me on pen and paper. Okay. And then nursing will be 7. All right, so I'll go up to 7. I'll go over, try to go over again, and then come down. Okay, these should be sort of straight. I'll see if my finger does any better. History is 3, so we go up to 3 and over, and then psychology is 1. Okay, now this is a little bit different. This looks a little more uniform here. This looks a little bit like a bell curve, which is something we'll be talking about later in this chapter. Don't worry about things like that. These are your majors over here. These are the frequencies. You just basically count up, add them all up. Sorry, you don't add them all up. Write them all out. Set up the rectangles. Each rectangle's height refers to the frequency. Now, if we did want to do a relative frequency, again, we would divide each one by 24, right? So if we needed to do a relative frequency, we divide by 24. Oops. All right, and then we divide by 24, and then we divide by 24, and we divide by 24, and we divide by 24, and we divide by 24. Okay, that's a little tedious. I already did that a little bit once. I don't want to do that again in the time here. You could probably figure that out with just some simple button pushing. The shape will be the same. The only thing that would change over here would be you would have percentages instead of frequency counts. Okay, so give this a try, see how it does, and that's it. All right.